to start the planning board meeting, and we're joining
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we're being video recorded and sent out live?
Yes.
Okay. And so first up, is approval not required, A&R at 1065 Horse Neck Road.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Mark Boucher with CAB Engineering Solutions, Inc., out of New Bedford, Mass., 25 Elm Street. And I'm here this evening to present the approval not required plan for my clients, Joseph and Karen Kalishian, who are looking to divide this parcel, 80-foot wide parcel on the northerly end of their property as a non-buildable lot, retaining the remaining land that contains the house and the outbuildings as shown on our plan. None of these parcels have any wetlands on them, and the lot that contains the existing house has sufficient frontage area and upland to qualify or remain qualifying as a buildable lot. Parcel B that we show is not a buildable lot, and it's been labeled accordingly. And we would request that the planning board vote to endorse the plan as an approval not required division of land.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
So this is just about parcel B,
Yes.
and it seems straightforward, but can I just ask why you're creating a non-buildable lot?
I think the Kalishians at some point in time intend to convey it to one of the neighbors that's interested in purchasing.
To whom?
Convey it to one of the neighbors, the Huntingtons.
Ah,
So, so the Huntington lot already has frontage, I think, on the Red Brook Lane, right?
No, the Huntington parcel has frontage on Indian Spring Way.
In Indian Spring.
Yeah. Red Brook Lane does not actually touch this parcel.
And so the Huntingtons own that 20-foot strip already?
Yes. That was on a previous A&R plan.
Is Indian Spring Way exist?
Does. Was approved under the subdivision control law.
Okay. I understand what you're doing, but I don't understand what you're doing. So, or I don't understand why you're doing it. So, so how big is this Huntington lot?
Let's see if I have that.
Michael, can
It's
you orient us
approximately
for that?
Just under 17 acres.
Okay, and is this, that's the Huntington lot?
Yeah, he's asking you if that's the
The
Huntington.
Huntingtons, at this point in time, the Huntingtons actually own this lot as well as this lot.
So the Huntingtons already get their access, that's a driveway you just had the cursor on, right?
Yes. They get their access on Indian Spring Way. Down
And
here.
that's a private approved subdivision.
Yep.
road. There's additional lots further down that get some frontage on Indian Spring as well. And that carries with it, no additional lots can be obtained on Indian Spring Way.
So they couldn't subdivide, the Huntingtons could not subdivide, that's what you're saying?
Correct.
Any more questions?
More motion?
I guess so. It's still a mystery to me, but
I move to endorse A&R plan for 1065 Horse Neck Road as presented, finding that it does not require subdivision approval under Mass General Laws, Chapter 41.
Second. Any more questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
And it's too soon for the 6:15 public hearing. So do you have a short plans report?
Yeah, it's short. The first item on the planner's report is an update on the Northern Scenic Greenway, which is the shared use trail that we're designing with Mass Trails, or with Mass Trails funding, with the South Coast Bikeway Alliance and Serped. We are working our way through the proposal review process, and once we have selected a consultant, we'll give you more information on that. Update on our Barrier Beach Management Plan. On June 22nd, we'll be asking the Select Board for an endorsement of that plan, and we will also ask them to sign the Notice of Intent to take to the Conservation Commission and get permitting through DEP in an order of conditions. And lastly, our hazard mitigation plan, we received comments from MEMA and FEMA, so we're working through those, going to update the plan accordingly, and then hopefully we'll be able to have an approved plan through sometime this fall. I had to extend our grant contract because there were delays in the FEMA review process, so that grant contract was extended to October. So hopefully, we've been on top of getting things back to them, just because of the way federal staffing is right now. They've had some delays in their
So
review
what's the
process.
process now? I mean, they've replied to our submittal. Is it it's not approved until we resubmit?
Yes, we have to address their comments and get a clean letter essentially, and then they'll stamp, not literally stamp it, but they'll send it back and say, this is good, this is an approved hazard mitigation plan. Would you like to move to the assistant planner's report while we're waiting? We have a couple more minutes.
One thing, I'm sure you know, happened to be at the select board meeting, and they unanimously voted to endorse, or to send a letter of support for the master plan grant.
They did, yeah. Thank you for telling that.
Okay, so the assistant planner's report. First, I have a construction update from SW Cole for Corey Ridge Estates. So I'm just going to read off the report. Derek has started inspections for ongoing inspection. So the roadway has been cut in from Cornell Road through the property to the hammerhead in front of lot number 2. The stone tracking pad is installed. Detention basins 1 and 2 have been excavated and rough graded, while detention basin 3 has been constructed and graded per the plan. Some loam has been installed. The 12-inch HDPE piping from basin 3 to basin 2 is installed and was available for review. Straw wattles were noted for the entire length of the project on the eastern edge of the property. And then Derek outlines the upcoming work, which will be completing excavation of basins 1 and 2, final grade, installing loam and seed, and the pipe work. So he's included a bunch of photos as well if you'd want to go through them.
We're also working on some edits to the homeowners association document that'll be brought forward to the planning board at the next meeting for your endorsement.
Want to go through that first?
Sure. I'll move this in the middle.
Or is it just two?
No, there's quite a few actually. So I don't have the plan up next to me, but here's the gravel roadway.
Okay, can you orient us, please?
Sure. This is the beginning of Thomas Corey Lane, and this is off of Cornell Road.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So this is the entrance. It's a 4-lot subdivision. And like Derek said, work is ongoing. Usually he captions these photos, so it can be a little easier to identify what we're looking at. But we're in pretty close contact with Rich Sisson, who's the contractor on site.
Mhm.
So we exchange emails every week. So Derek will be going
Rich Sisson?
Rich Sisson. Mm-hmm. So Derek will probably be going out probably next week again.
So this is the one that was held up in court for quite a while, right?
Yeah.
Well, if there are no other additional comments, we can move on to the 6:15 public
Okay.
hearing.
Okay, next up is the public hearing for 6:15 for Route 88 Solar, file number 26-3937 SP-S minor modification. After the fact modification to the large-scale solar special permit to allow above-ground utility poles instead of underground installation.
Mr. Chairman, good evening, members of the board. Attorney Todd Broder from Fletcher Tilton here on behalf of the applicant. I think we kind of commonly call it Route 88 Solar, but it's got a more formal name. It's an LLC. You may recall, some of the members I recall from 2018-19 when we actually permitted this project. Quite some time ago. It's taken this long to get to where we are. The project is on the 1 yard line, so to speak, in terms of the on-site work. But that does include Sullivan Drive, which is, I think, the real reason that we're here. So we're here for a modification of the approval plans. This project had gone through quite an extensive permitting process with the town, special permit, site plan, also Conservation Commission. This has multiple layers to it when you deal with the utilities and the interconnection and the metering and everything else that goes along with the solar projects. And most of the projects that the client works on, they have some flexibility in terms of underground and above ground poles. It was a little bit lost, frankly, on this one as we got down towards the end of Sullivan Drive. As you can see from what's out there today, if you've been on site, it's underground the entire way on Sullivan Drive. It's thousands of feet of distance. And the applicant made improvements to that road, including culvert replacements, which were needed. That was causing some drainage and other issues in the area. So it looks as it should on the plans. It looks that way in person until you get up to about the end here, where you see 3 utility poles installed by Verizon. It says Verizon. It's an Eversource project. It's probably too much detail to go into, but the poles are Verizon poles, and it's an Eversource project. So, but it's driven by, the poles and the location are driven by the utility and their requirements. What's out there today, you'll see if you've been up there, there are 3 poles along Sullivan Drive on sort of the straight way of it, if you will. When you get down to the elbow and it turns towards the project site, there are currently 6 poles along the drive as you get into the facility. Those poles are actually customer poles which will be relocated. So that what you see out there today, those 6 poles will be relocated. They are sort of tightly packed. They were purposeful, but we can relocate those, do control that, and that's something that we can do. But what's proposed instead is 4 poles down towards what I'm referring to as the elbow, if you will. And they're a little bit lower on that drive, so they're closer to the turning area where it's wider and there's more room to place them there. They don't need to be tightly packed like they are where the 6 poles are. The 4 poles will be a little bit more spaced out, and there's 2 on either side of Sullivan Drive. So those would replace, those would essentially replace the 6 poles, but those 6 poles do still need to exist. They would be located within the project site. They need, you need to go pole to pole on a project like this once you get above ground. So what's out there today, 6 poles that are customer poles, and then the 3 poles along the straightaway. The 3 poles, we're proposing that the 3 poles along the straightaway would stay. The 6 poles would move onto the site, closer to the equipment that's on site that it needs to hook into. And instead, there would be 4 utility poles placed by Verizon towards the elbow area. So I hope that's clear, but that's the intent of the amendment. And I would like to say, I know the staff put in their memo and their thoughts on this, that it's an after the fact modification, and it is. I don't think we can sit here and say that it isn't. But I just wanted to make sure we were clear that it wasn't this malicious thing. It just, the project moved on, and in most projects there is some flexibility with the utility when we're talking about underground or overhead. In this case, this was the design that ended up getting pushed through the Eversource process, and so this is what we have today. It wasn't meant to negatively impact the neighbors or the area, or to fly in the face of what's in the town's bylaw. It really is driven by the utility. I wish we had a bit of a better answer than that. I know there was some disappointment in the memo as to not explaining further the rationale, and perhaps if we were mechanical engineers or the like, we might be able to explain exactly what the issue is, but I can tell you that it has to do with the SMART program and metering responsibilities and having riser poles where needed. So we're trying to do the best with what we have there currently. To start over, so to speak, would require a significant process with Eversource, probably a 9-12 month delay is what we figure. And the project is really ready to come online. So we'd like to start producing that energy that's supposed to be coming out of that field sooner than later for a variety of different reasons. But that's where we are. So we're looking for an amendment to the existing approved plan to provide for locating those poles as stated. So the 4 poles in the elbow and the 3 poles that are along the straightaway. And then we would need customer poles on site to tie into the 4 poles that are in the elbow area.
So I'm a little confused about how many poles we're talking about. So we got 3 on the straightaway on Sullivan Drive, which you're hoping don't have to be moved. And then in the elbow you have 4.
Correct.
And those exist or are going to exist?
They do not.
They don't exist.
Correct.
And then you have 6 on site. So you've got 13 poles?
There are 6 currently there are 6 currently in this area. Those poles need to be moved on site. They still need to exist.
So
we would
those
end up
red
with-
arrows are new locations?
I think there were 2 versions of the plan. I apologize. Maybe this is the older version of the plan, but the six where it says 6 utility poles installed by Agreco, those are what we're calling the customer poles. Those show where they are, mostly where they are currently, but they would be moved within the fenced area.
So in the end, there'll be 6 on the fenced area and
Yes.
3 on Sullivan, or more on
There'll be
Elbow.
7 on Sullivan, 4 in the elbow, 3 on the straightaway, and then 6 on
the,
the
so 13.
yes.
So our approval, I believe, went by our bylaw, which said underground, right?
So we had a lot of discussion about poles and other utility items. But if you go back, you might also remember that we were permitting this project prior to modifications to your bylaw, right? Somewhere in the middle of that permitting process, the town meeting adopted some new provisions, and we had filed a subdivision plan ahead of that to freeze zoning. We moved forward on the project under the old bylaw. Well, it's old bylaw. So when we got to the end of it, there was some discussion about how closely we complied with the new one, and we didn't in all respects. And we were granted some waivers from those items. This result really wasn't intended, so that's why this is coming to you late in the process. We intended to do as stated and keep it underground as much as possible. And as you know from the length of Sullivan Drive, that it's a really long run where it's underground. Vast improvements were made in that area to the culverts and the like.
So, I mean, it isn't unusual for solar connections to be underground, especially on public ways. There's a big stretch going in with Eversource now from Hicksbridge area towards Dartmouth, and I think down Horse Neck Road. And in Rhode Island, there was a really long underground on Fish Road and Brighton Road. It went to a large solar array. So I guess the question in my mind is, you're saying people thought there's flexibility in the decision.
But there is normally on the projects that the company works through. Usually their plans say, UG/OH, meaning underground or overhead, and it sometimes is dependent upon site conditions you find, and sometimes it's other factors. Partly because the utility specifications change with some frequency, so you're kind of following the bouncing ball, if you will, in terms of trying to comply with those various programs.
I am a little perplexed, but anybody have any questions?
When do you want to open the public hearing? Yeah. You want a motion to open a public hearing?
Sure.
I move to open the Route 88 solar public hearing on
Second motion. All those in favor?
Aye. Mr. Chair, as you know, we've been supportive of this project, and it's good to see it's on the 1 yard line, because it's clean, renewable energy. But what disturbs me a little bit, and congratulations on of it underground, or whatever it is, 90%. But what concerns me is when we have a bylaw on either a utility company, Verizon, which you said installs some of the poles, or the developer says, well, doesn't apply to me, you know, and so we're just gonna put them in here in violation of the bylaw. I don't know that it makes a big difference, although I couldn't help but see in the TV news of the recent storm, you know, all these utility lines broken in half by fallen trees, which you wouldn't want to have happen here. Other than that, and I'm not sure there are any trees there to fall over the lines, I think it's an issue of precedent, you know, that we've got to be concerned with that, well, it's okay for some people to violate some of the bylaws. You know, that it's close enough. You know, we did an awful lot underground, but we can't do all of it. And maybe the practical answer to that is, yeah, go ahead, but I'm worried about then people saying, well, there are exceptions to this bylaw you've already granted, so we don't have to do stuff underground either. That's what concerns me. And I don't understand why, if you go underground all this way, you can't just finish it underground. You know, is it a case of rock getting in the way of dredging, or, you know, what's the difference? I don't get that.
There's a reason why we changed the bylaw, and that's because the utility companies like to do it their way, and they like to do what is easiest for them. And we have a project on Main Road that was back in the woods. And it was actually a very good solar project in that, along with land swaps and a whole bunch of things, there were a great deal of benefits out of that. And it was not visible at all from traveling up and down Main Road, except when they ran the power up, then all of the transformation and metering equipment is hanging on these big poles. And people were sort of, you know, outraged that the whole project was sort of hidden, except when you get to the street, and then all of the big ugly stuff is hanging on the poles. And to me, it makes a big difference on what's going to be on those 4 poles. If you take those other 6 poles and put them on your site, and all that metering and transformation stuff is on your site, away from view of the road, that's one thing. If it's just being moved from those 6 poles onto these 4 poles, then I think that's not a good solution. It's in violation of the bylaw.
I don't know, Michael, if you know.
So it makes a big difference with what's on those poles.
How are you? Mike Kushner with Agreco, General Manager of our USDG sort of division, so projects like this all fall under my domain. Appreciate the time tonight to discuss this. So also, at the time the project was approved, it was a company, Infinity Energy, of which I was the CEO. We had since sold the company to Agreco, and all of our projects and team sort of was absorbed into Agreco. Greco, so a little bit of the history there. But so I've been involved with this from day one, which hopefully gives you some comfort that I'm speaking from a place of at least having the background. To answer your question directly, the 6 poles that are, so if we think of it like Christmas lights, and some of you may know solar, some of you may not, essentially we're taking our array and we're trying to connect to the utility, right? So it's 2 ends of the same circuit, right? Essentially, or what we hope to be the same circuit. The 6 poles that are existing now that are customer owned, or our side of the Christmas array in my analogy, we are going to move those into the site. They will have what was always intended to be on them. It's not a matter of moving those onto the 4 poles from the utility that we're asking for. The utility will have some of their equipment on poles as well, but most of the heavy equipment, I think, as you described, metering, reclosers, GoAbs, air brakes, things like that, are on our 6 poles. That's customer supplied equipment, so we'll have that inside the array. Specifically on the 4, we could probably clarify that for you. I'd want to check with my engineers. I know it's lighter than what we would have on ours. So that's number 1. I think the other point that I would like to present here to the board, right, is the intent here on the underground, and appreciating your comment about 90% of it being per intended underground. There's one aspect here is that when we had the original site plan approval and special use permitting, it was all done prior, as is common, right, throughout the Commonwealth, quite frankly, these types of projects, prior to the timeline in which the utility defines and finishes their design. So we're taking best known practices of what they will do and what we typically will design, and then from an electrical feasibility perspective, and sort of presenting that at the time of site plan. The reason that we do that, and the reason it happens like that often, and you may have heard Todd mention the beginning of 2018, 2019, 2020, it wasn't a matter of us as Infinity or now Greco delaying the project or capital constraints or anything like that. The project got lumped into what's called a cluster study. And so anyone who lives in the Commonwealth understands that there's been a proliferation of solar projects over the last decade in the Commonwealth, right? And so what happens is the more that they become centralized in certain areas back to a specific substation, all of those need to be studied together. So even though there may not be a bunch of projects within a certain radius of this exact project, they're all heading back to a certain substation, and when you get to a certain level of saturation, the utility studies that in what's called a group study or a cluster study. And that took 4 or 5 that we were just at the mercy of, waiting for that approval. And so when that comes through that study, a lot of what we have now on the utility side, coming to our side, again in that analogy I was using the Christmas lights, it becomes revealed at that time. So just a little bit of the linearness or lack of linearness in the process, I think contributed here a little bit. I think the other part is, as Todd mentioned, often we'll have UG/OH on the drawings because of that timeline and it being a little bit disjointed, right, from the utility approvals versus when we're getting municipality approvals. So I'll pause there and see if there's any additional questions. I spoke for a little bit longer than I thought.
So I am fully aware of all the difficulties of getting an interconnection, because we've done quite a few of these things. And some of them have been way delayed and some of them have not. Eversource is now putting in some structure on the east side of Westport going into Dartmouth to handle what's already been approved and not installed. So I understand all that, and I understand the new state law takes some of our ability to detail what you can do from us, right? But that wasn't the case here. And I think even though the state delayed you, I don't understand how that changes what you agreed to do.
Understood. I think the other point, and I appreciate that, the other point I would add, if you look here, anyone who's been out to Sullivan Drive heading into the site, as Todd mentioned, we had a couple of pretty significant culverts that we put in, one further down on the straightaway, and then one effectively here it's comparable to bridge work, right? Like bridge work. Not being an engineer or in the project management side at the utility, I can only surmise that part of the discussion when this came out, again, on the utility side, we've already acknowledged and completely agreed, the customer owned poles, which we have autonomy over within the utility developer relationship. We'll move these inside the array as intended. That was, no issue. Really, they shouldn't have gone there. It was just they're closer to where the utility was coming up. But we'll move those in there. I can only surmise that the reason they may have designed here overhead not being involved in there is that this crossing in this environmentally sensitive area where we have a lot of this ecological sensitive area where we had to put in the culvert in the bridge to make sure the water and everything is staying is probably contributing to that design, if I had to guess. But again, I'm not on the design side for the utility, so I hesitate to say that with all definitiveness.
The biggest culvert on the run, on the Sullivan Drive run, I think is actually right in here. It's appears to be fairly dry today, but I think we know we're in sort of drought conditions, not having had a lot of rain.
I think that was a contributing factor in their design.
What's on the Verizon poles? Is it just cabling?
It's cabling here, and then they may have a meter, but it won't have air brakes and reclosers. So
No, the three Verizon poles, they exist.
just cabling.
Just cabling.
Cabling. Yeah, these three that are existing currently. So there's however many feet run underground, essentially riser pole, and then just cabling to get
So
back.
I guess I'm still confused. You give the project, so we didn't ask you to do it, you came to ask us if you could do it, right? If you could-
The project in entirety?
Yeah,
Correct.
right, so, and at the same time, you're asking Verizon, not Verizon, but Eversource,
Mm-hmm.
to connect,
Correct.
and you wait, and you wait, and you wait.
And wait.
But how does it get dropped that these poles are not supposed to be there?
So if we were to go back in time, as soon as this comes out of that study years later, so I forget the exact date of the approval for the site plan.
2019.
2019, and so 2023 or 2024, when the utility approval came through that study, at that point, essentially what should just happen is, okay, they're designing this with these poles, we should come for this exact conversation at that point. That's how we would have done it in hindsight. Part of that is, again, company sold, a couple different development managers on our team. No excuse, just sort of what happened.
So these three poles are gonna be visible from 88 and Sullivan Drive, right?
Perhaps in the winter, they may be, right? I think in the summer, I don't think there's really very much chance anyone's gonna see it from Route 88.
And again, so on the elbow, you're saying there's gonna be 4 additional poles there.
Correct, so this third pole that's currently installed to here, and then, right, so you have both sides of them, and they come back to our 6 poles, and the reason that there's 4 there
So
is
they're gonna be on both sides of the road?
they are, and it's PV, and then it's a battery project, as you guys know, right, so there's a battery as well, so the smart project requirement, or program requirement, sorry, is that you have, sort of, the connection is running in parallel.
Can you bring up the photos?
The near map?
No, the ones.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so what's on the 4 poles that are gonna be relocated on the elbow?
That are not yet installed. I'll confirm that for you guys. I'll confirm with our engineers, but it should be cabling and meters, that's it. There shouldn't be any air brakes or reclosers or large equipment.
Are those 6 poles your poles?
Correct, those are
the
gonna
ones
move.
that get moved.
Correct. We're gonna deconstruct and move those back in.
And then, and then towards us, as we're looking at this photo, would be where the 4
Correct, so this,
Verizon poles. would be.
That's right.
Yeah.
that's the request. Correct, sir.
So all the ones outside of your property will be owned by Verizon? Or
Correct.
half by Verizon and half by Eversource?
Verizon installed, Eversource owned, so they'll both probably have rights to maintain whatever they need to, but yes. None of them will be customer owned. We won't have any maintenance obligation or ownership rights to those.
So if there's no houses up there, why is Verizon involved?
Great question. I mean, we have telecom, right? In some of the cabling you see sometimes is fiber or cell service, just for the array itself reports cellularly, weather conditions and energy reporting, things like that. I I can go back and check with our engineers why these are Verizon versus Eversource, but often that's the case.
So I guess my other question, and then I'll let other people
Sure.
speak, but is who dropped the ball? Is it you or the utility, or the utility dropped the ball and you didn't catch it, or what?
It's a great question. I'd say no matter what, I'm the one standing here, so it's me, my team, us as the developer. I think what it is that 4 or 5 years of study, they come out with their interconnection design. You know, how much they look at the site plan that's provided, that's approved, I can't speak to because I'm just not in that room.
So the other question, I'm sorry I lied. Give up the speaker thing, but, so the reason that you're here is you don't want to have the time delay, or you don't want to spend the money, or is it both?
Time more than anything. Essentially, you're going to wind up, and we would wind up with a phantom project for as long as the utility takes, right? So we know the last time that we went through this design process, it took 4 or 5 years. And I don't think that's beneficial. Certainly not beneficial to us. Obviously, that's the place I'm speaking from. But from the municipality perspective, I don't think it's beneficial in the sense that it would delay the pilot payments that we make. As soon as we turn this on, we start to make our pilot payments on an annual basis.
Okay. Anybody else on the board? Planners, and then I'll open it up to the public.
Sure. So I have a review, a staff review to share. As we know, this is requesting a modification to a special permit for solar. I'll just read a little bit about the background. So
Please don't read the whole thing.
no, I'll read the background and then it's really quick. Actually, it's just a couple bullets. So the first approval was in 2019, where at the time it was stated that the utilities would be installed underground. And then site plan rules and regulations and zoning bylaws also call for underground utilities. This past winter in 2026, the utilities were installed above ground. And in January 2026, the abutter at map 29, lot 22A also reported concerns to the planning department regarding access due to the customer utility poles. So when looking at site plan rules and regulations, the proposed modification does not indicate screening for the proposed utility poles. And looking at detailed performance standards for other utilities, the project is identified as a large-scale solar energy system, a development requiring underground utilities to the extent feasible. And these utilities were required as approved by the planning board special permit for solar. When it comes to the town of Westport zoning bylaws, the narrative submitted with this modification details the ongoing approval process, but does not address how site conditions necessitated the overhead utilities. Rationale was not provided. When it comes to the wetlands, the conservation has no concerns regarding the Wetlands Protection Act. And then, yeah, just to review, the applicant did not provide evidence to show that the site conditions required it. So staff finds that the modification as presented does not screen utilities and does not make reasonable effort to place all utilities underground.
Okay, I think they haven't claimed that it's the physical aspect, so, of the property. Anything more?
Chris was okay with it, but yeah.
John?
Thanks for the presentation. I think that, you know, I doubt anyone here wants to delay a worthwhile project 4 years while you go redo a mistake. So there's a couple of choices, I guess. One is you're before us asking for forgiveness. Hey, we screwed up, forgive us. We, meaning including Verizon. In which case I can see in the future everybody coming up saying, you did it for them, do it for me. Why do I have to bury it? And the other option is mitigation. All right, go ahead and do this. But you made a mistake, and so you should do something in addition that benefits the people of Westport. And so that That way, there's a little bit of a penalty for, as our chairman said, drop and fall. And then when the next person comes and said you did it, yeah, well, they paid a penalty. This is what else they had to do because they did that. You know, that could be, as I drive by, I look at it because I love solar. I got solar on my house. I just love it. And I look at the screening, which is, I don't know, this tall, and the solar panels, so you see right over the screening. So the screening doesn't really accomplish its purpose. But I wonder if there are other ideas you might have about public benefit if we let you go ahead and forgive you on the forgiveness model as opposed to go back and do it correctly model.
Sure.
Because I don't think, I mean, just speaking for myself, I don't want to see this delayed 4 years.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's not often also that we walk in where people say that they like solar. It's 50-50 coin,
Yeah.
so it's positive. Not taking under advisement. I don't know that I can off the top of my head, but I understand the problem.
So based upon that comment, do we want to continue to have them, give them time to think about?
Yeah, but we want to have you or Bob ask or say something, and then we'll open it up to the audience, and then we can do that.
I understand the situation coming from your line of work. Is there any possibility of maybe drafting a technical memo or something to attach to the package to explain the situation as well, so we have it also in public writing, so if someone ever does come back, we have documented evidence. I come from an industry where if it's not written down, it doesn't exist, never happened. So that's where I'm leaning from for my technical expertise is if we can get like a summary of event timeline and where we kind of went awry on the public record, I think that would be beneficial for the town to have as well. So if someone does come back or we have an issue like this in the past, we have a little bit more background on that when we could possibly look at that. So that would be one of my requests out of this. That's all I have.
Okay.
Can I ask a question on that? We'll obviously apply. Company letterhead, site use attorney letterhead, engineering letterhead, any preference?
Just company letterhead with,
Perfect.
yeah, that'd be fine.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so if there's anybody here that would like to ask a question or say something, please come up to the podium.
Both come up, or you want us to do it separate?
You can come up together, just have to identify both of them.
Hi there, my name is George Dean. I own the property from that whole elbow to the site itself,
Along with me.
along with my brother Alan.
Alan.
Can we go back to the other site where they're showing the poles
Did
and
you get
arms?
their names? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so we own right to 88 through here, all the way up to their property line.
So
And
it's to the south.
yes, from their side. It's
Yep.
2.5 acre parcel that we own right here.
Okay,
And it's a buildable house lot. It's already been perked, and we were never notified about any of these poles. So there is 6 poles here, but you're forgetting about all the guy wires that are holding it. We have no egress right now to our property with what's there existing. And these
How do
poles,
how do you get to your property right now?
right here, this is,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is the
This is
highlands,
clear.
this is the higher piece of property
Yeah.
where it's cleared, you can go down. This here is all the wetlands against 88 to
Yeah, yeah.
the swale.
Yeah.
So their poles are literally 2 to 3 feet from our property line. And they cut trees and they cut above the poles to clearance. So there's all switchgear here, so these will also be on our property line. And there's no means, I don't know of any means for us to get power to our property. I mean, they've done a great job on the road, and there's no bridge here, there is nothing going through here. This is all existing the way it was for umpteen years. I mean, I have no idea how long.
So it's a vacant lot?
It's a vacant wood lot, which has been
It's a wood lot.
perked. It is a house lot.
It perks?
Yes.
It has, you have record of it.
And you have frontage? And you
Yeah,
have
150 feet of frontage.
an area?
Yep.
See, originally what happened was the town, our family went to court against the town, and the judge sided with our parents, stating that it does meet the criteria to be a
A buildable
House
house
lot.
lot.
So, I mean, how many square feet do you have?
It's 2.5 acres, I think it's 2.4.
And you got over 30,000 square feet
Oh,
of
yeah.
upland.
Oh,
What was the problem?
What do you mean?
You didn't have frontage on Sullivan Drive?
because this was an easement
Oh, it was an easement, okay.
back in the day.
So where does Sullivan Drive stop? Do we know?
I think it stops right here now, as far as I don't know that.
I don't know that it does.
But
I mean, it would have.
either way, there's no means to our property right now.
No, I understand that.
Okay.
I'm not disputing
Right.
that. I'm
And
just
if
saying.
you look on the other ones, proposed Sullivan Drive goes up to Pedro's farm, way back here in his fields.
Right,
That's the old road.
old Sullivan Drive.
Correct. The old Sullivan,
So this,
these poles are after Sullivan Drive.
right, so Sullivan Drive ends there, basically.
Yeah, right about here,
Yeah. So this is what?
an easement
From
Pedro.
Pedro.
Pedro being,
Not Pedro the farmer, Pedro from, well, it was before they even owned it.
Pedro being the company.
Right. Well, no, it'd be who owned the property with the vineyard,
Right,
the
right,
winery.
right.
But this was done previous to them owning it. So I don't know when that was. Back in the
Yeah,
70s or 80s.
So you're saying you won't have access from Sullivan Drive?
How can you sell a piece of property that you can't get to if there's gonna be stay wires and poles in front of it? I'm just saying.
yeah, I don't know what they're talking about moving those poles. I don't know what the.
Right, they're moving
configuration
those.
will be.
Onto their property, but there's still gonna be 4 here that we're gonna have to deal with. There's gonna be overhead wires, I'm assuming from here to there.
And I'm wondering if is it gonna be a safety issue if someone does wanna buy it to put a house up on the side of a solar field and with all the power lines coming out?
And they also put all the blockading on the south solar farm for visibility. They did nothing for our piece of property for visibility to the solar farm. And I was just wondering if there's any plan for the retention pond and stuff there against our property line for maintenance or anything like that.
So the requirement for the screening was done at the public hearings we had 6 or 7 years ago. Did you guys come to that?
No, we weren't aware of it. We weren't notified.
You should have been notified. as
Oh, we
a
didn't
butter.
we didn't get it.
We haven't gotten any mailings.
This may confuse the people at the microphone, but I'd be interested in understanding why in this section above the corner, there have to be poles on both sides of the street.
I'm assuming.
You just have poles on one side of the street for the straight line. Right, it comes around the corner and then there are poles on both sides of the street. Why is that? Yeah, you unfortunately,
Sure.
sorry, back.
No, it's all right. I've been sitting on a train all day, so it's okay. Again, I'll confirm, but it's parallel battery plus solar. So that's likely why.
So they can't do that on poles on one side of the street?
As it's designed, no, but let me find out why. I'll speak to the engineers and just confirm, the electrical engineers.
Around that question though, since you have poles on both sides of the street and you only have poles on one side, what happens to the lines that are going on the other side of the street there? That would be a question I have, because right now you have poles on one side of the street further down, but you have poles on parallel sides of the street going through that corner. What happens to the line on the other side of the street? So they're saying there have to be parallel lines based upon the battery versus the solar, but at the same point,
It's one here.
there's only one set
Yeah, I think
there,
it's the
unless,
cabling as
yeah.
it comes up the riser, and then the cabling comes, and then.
Yeah, that would be my question, is understanding
Right.
your two 2x2s across,
Been out
and
there
then all of
for
a
a
sudden
month.
you shop the one. So
And
I
I
think
will say, having been out there last week or 2 weeks ago, and not certain with the abutter landowner here, in terms of how much egress they're thinking about or considering. When we move these 6 poles, there's quite a bit of room here, I think, for drive access, based on what we were out there with our site.
I'm not sure.
Our site contract.
I'm not sure if they picked up on that. So the 6 poles that are there right now.
Oh, no, I know that.
Those are all, and everything else is coming down.
So there's still gotta be 4 poles with stay wires.
Excuse me, through the chair.
I'm sorry.
You can ask me the question.
I just, there's 4 poles, but there's gonna be stay wires on our property to hold those poles. Is it?
I don't know that.
Right.
I don't know that.
Well, there is
So,
now, I'm just.
The other thing that interested me is you said you can't get electricity here.
Well, I don't know that. When I spoke to Eversource, and nobody can tell me how I get power to my piece of property from what they did here, bringing the solar down.
Well, there's,
I was never spoken to from Eversource.
yeah, okay. But I think you need to ask the question because Eversource is a public utility and they have lines going down at least to the end of Sullivan.
Correct.
I don't know about on the easement.
Right.
That other line is their line, basically.
So it's not that,
And so I don't know if it's connectable,
exactly, that's
So, I
another
mean-
one of my questions.
but you need to find out.
Exactly.
And we have no success in talking with Eversource ourselves, so you've got to talk to them.
And when I spoke to the representative, Joe, he couldn't give me any information whatsoever on what was happening and when, you know what I mean, because it is a buildable house lot. Whether we build on it or we sell it and build on it, it's still gotta be able to be proposed electricity, whatever else, Verizon for, you know, telecommunication or whatever.
And so, and I hate to keep on dwelling on your problem here, but with the change in ownership, I assume there was some change in ownership. Did the easement survive that?
Yes.
You sure?
Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I think, I'm trying to keep a mental list here, but assuming that we're going to continue this, to get some suggestions from you on mitigation, and we've heard about screening towards Route 88, we've heard about screening or other things that don't take away from these gentlemen's ability to market their property. And then the question that I don't think you can answer right now, which is why do you need poles on one side of the road for 90% of the way, and then you need poles on 2 sides of the road? Because if you're gonna move 6 of them, so that kind of solves that problem. But the 4 that Verizon wants, you know, why can't that be 2? If they're on the inside of the road, all the way up there, why do they have to go to the outside of the road once you get to the corner?
So we're talking about
Those 2.
the general question, but these 2 specifically.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and also, the ones closer to your property, those are the ones that are going to affect their ability to get into their lot.
Well, they're
These
gonna
won't be
move. They won't be.
They're gonna be inside our fence.
Yeah, so they'll,
After we had, I think maybe Joe, who was our project manager, had become aware of the concern with access for, I think Mr. Dean, I'm sorry. Yeah, so we had said we'll move those poles inside, that's reasonable, obviously.
Okay?
So I think Jared read an interesting point. I think we need information from you on what is going to be on the 4 poles that you're asking for. That is the equipment that's hanging on there. And then whatever, I don't know which set of poles has the power, which has the controls or the battery or anything, but
how does whatever's hanging on the poles on the south side, how does it get to the north side?
This?
Yeah.
It
Is
would be over there. I'll confirm.
is that overhead, or does it drop down and go, how does, whatever's running on the south side,
Mhm.
does that go over? So I think, what's on those poles, and how does it get transferred from the south side of the roadway to the north side? The south side wires to the north side, and then, is all the metering and the heavy transformation, all of that, those kinds of things that are hanging on the poles, is that all going to move into your property?
All of our heavy power conditioning equipment on our poles will be inside on our poles. But I'll get confirmation for you on these four.
So then when those poles and their guys and everything go away, they now have physical, I don't know what their legal access is, but they would then have physical access to get in the high, dry part of their land.
So how far into your land where these 6 poles go?
Sure. Can we go to the aerial measurements that you had of the existing? Yeah, if you could zoom in a little bit for me, please.
Sure.
Thank you. So currently we're approximately here, right? 3, something like this over here. We're going to be in this area, right? To be finalized in terms of whether we're going to split these or just keep 6 here. Mostly just because the gate for maintenance of the site coming in here, we just want to make sure we don't restrict lawn mowing equipment.
So is there any reason if you're gonna be moving all that equipment off of the poles and relocating the poles,
Mm-hmm.
why can't you put this equipment on the ground,
As far
right there?
it's just different equipment. So it's pad mounted equipment versus pole mounted, which is a different, and you're talking about a couple things, right? So one, I don't know, we'd probably have to come back with concrete pads, structural design, conservation commission for impervious conditions. So there's that process that I'm sure we'd have to go through. And then I think secondarily, the equipment that is out there that can go on the poles within our customer owned, which was, I think, initially intended pole mounted anyway within the array. If I think back to the original site plan, our customer poles were always pole mounted inside of here. So these 6, the error was here versus inside the fence. I don't think that's really a deviation from plan, it's just a deviation locationally. But the equipment itself that's here, that we would transition to pad mounted, comes with different equipment, different spec. We'd have to go back to utility because we're changing that. Even though I understand the question is, if I have a recloser or an air brake and I'm gonna put it on a pole versus a pad, why would Eversource need to get involved again? It's just the process that would, and we'd have to go back through that entire, and we'd be deviating from the interconnection approval.
I'm just thinking of what John was talking about, mitigation.
Mm-hmm.
Because a bunch of poles all together with a bunch of junk on top of it, it's pretty ugly.
Understood. I think I will answer or get the answer on, can these 2 be on the north side? What is on these 4, currently 2 south, 2 north? So that's one key question. I think that the 6 that we're moving back into our array with pole mounted equipment was always the intent and what was approved originally in 2019. So my request would be not to start to redesign that and look for a complete deviation, respectfully. That's pretty
How
substantial.
far up there can you put it?
We spoke to Eversource 2 or 3 weeks ago when I made the decision to tell the team to move this back inside. And I think from recollection, we had 150 feet that we can move from their pole to our farm.
As far away from.
Correct. We will extend it to the furthest we can.
As far to the west as you can do it.
Sure.
And then the poles that are gonna be there, the 4 or 2 that are gonna be on the corner.
The utility one, right.
Right.
Yeah, I
If
think
you
that,
put them close together, they're ugly too.
Mhm.
If you can spread them out somehow,
Mm-hmm.
so that it isn't, we're used to seeing poles every so often.
Understood.
It really looks weird when you have 4 of them right next to each other.
I understand. I also, besides north and south, 2 and 2, I think that when they came out and installed and staked their poles, these were existing on the customer side, so we have some additional real estate perhaps that might make this more feasible. So I can have that conversation.
So if you need 4 poles, because it's not so much the wire as it is the equipment you're hanging on the poles, and once you move the 6 onto your property, as you say, you got more real estate, I think there's a big difference for your neighbors whether those poles are in the north side of the road or the south side of the road. And so if you need 4 poles, not so much for the wire as for what else you're hanging on them, you can spread them out now that you're moving the 6 of yours into the site. And I think that does a lot in terms of mitigating impact on your neighbors here. And I think the other thing to think about is screening both, as I said, the screening fence, it's there and all, but it just doesn't seem to be high enough when you're driving on 88, and the screening, there isn't any between the site, that's what you're saying, right?
Correct.
Where the solar panels are and their property, yeah. That you need to think about, put yourself in their shoes. They've got a piece of land there that if they can get electricity and the perks and everything, they can sell, but who's gonna buy it? What are they looking at?
Sure.
And how do you improve what they're looking at
And
under
all-
mitigation?
All this, the equipment that I see on the ground there, it looks white
It's
as
all the battery packs and everything.
that,
Battery inverters,
is that how many?
a single battery and a single central inverter. Then you have a transformer and some other equipment,
Does it,
weather data
Doesn't
monitoring.
make noise.
does it hum?
No, I think from, it's not on, right? So, but I from recollection, I think
So it
we-
doesn't make noise because it's not on?
It's not making any noise right now. I'd have to go back and look, but I think we had, at the original approval, I think we had gone through decibel level, sort of testing and things like, or we at least presented that as what these will emanate versus what the ordinance will.
Yeah. So that's important because visual screening doesn't take any mass. All it takes
Sure.
is something. But sound screening takes mass. And so if you're going to screen the sound from the abutter,
Mhm.
it's what do you build the quote fence out of,
Sure.
instead of a thin fabric which won't stop sound. That for that segment next to the batteries, etc.
Understood. Yeah, from recollection, we were underneath the decibel requirements, and I think we were even comparative to the Route 88 noise. But
Yeah.
we'll take a look at it. And
Yeah.
the Route 88 noise, I think, will flood out anything that's
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Yeah, but this is constant, so.
Understood.
It's different. So, this is a public hearing, so.
Yeah, I'd like to
Thank
make
you,
one
please.
comment. Alan Dean. I'm just wondering if it would be possible to get something in writing from these guys stating that, if I was to have my son build there, that it's gonna be totally healthy for him to live on the side of a solar field with the lines going across the front of the property. I'd like to know for my own sake. I don't wanna sell a piece of property to somebody that, if we go that route, or if my son or his sons, or, I'd like to have something in writing stating that this is safe and,
I'm sure they have access to that kind of information, so that they should be able to provide it to us, and we'll share it with you.
So if we continue this hearing, and we want your advice on how long, then I could see several conversations happening. We have a hard time talking to Eversource. These guys
Yeah.
have them on speed dial. And you may have a hard time with Eversource, but they don't. And so if they are talking to you about what do we do so that there's no adverse impact on your property, that might include answering your question about whether you can get service from Eversource to your property. They may be able to find out the answer for that, whereas you and us might not be able to. And also screening issues and the issue of the poles. And then it, you know, as Jared said, in terms of getting some of this on the record and written down, that kind of agreement could be something that you say to
Definitely
them,
beneficial.
trust but verify, can you write down what you're gonna do in terms of moving the poles or screening or whatever else you talk about, and I'm sure they'd be willing to do that.
I was in contact with Joe before they even put the poles in. They weren't even there, and this all came about, and nobody ever got back to us at all. That was the
Yeah.
problem. And then, as they're going, they're still going forward with dressing out those 6 poles. So I know they're gonna move them now, but they just dressed those things all out. There was nothing hanging on them before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they're still going forward with the 6 poles. They just put the wire on them, they just put the switches up there recently. So, okay, so the 6 poles are gonna come inside, but there's still gonna be 4, there's still gonna be guy wires at some point, because you can't go across the road without a guy wire going the same direction to hold that pole vertical.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
So the guy wires are gonna end up on our property if they do the north and the south.
Right.
And, you know, we have to see if there's means for getting us power. Because what I see, what they buried in the ground, they only brought down a couple of conduits where those vaults probably handled 10 or 12.
Right, but they probably didn't put vaults at your place.
No, the vaults are coming down the road,
Yeah.
and then it goes above ground at
Like
the,
above ground, you could get it from above ground. The question is,
is it there?
what is the nature of that electricity that goes on those poles?
Right.
Is it the right stuff? I don't know. So we'll try to have them find out for us.
Okay.
So again, this is a public hearing. Anybody else would like to comment, question?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question for the applicant. Is getting an answer to Mr. Dean's question about how they could receive electrical service something you would be amenable to do? Because you had posed that, but they didn't have a chance to respond.
So you may have seen Todd and I's sidebar and all that was happening. So certainly not against doing it. It's different departments within Eversource, so it's not exactly, so the folks that we have on speed dial are much more medium voltage, and you know, so we will make the attempt to shepherd through. Obviously, they've had some issues with getting through the utility, so we'll make an attempt to try to benefit us both through getting information.
So question, how do you power your regular stuff? You must have regular service at your place.
That's part of what's being brought up, right? So let's just hypothetically say that, let's say there was existing, or let's just say that the array went all the way towards Briggs, actually. We would be tying into existing circuit 13.2 kV lines that are there already. So it is, you know, it's your...
I mean, are you gonna have a field office there or something that uses electricity?
No, we're sending electricity back, right? So we have some things that have some parasitic load, but it's not necessarily the same in way that you may see further down Sullivan Drive where there's overhead service to some of the residences there. Not necessarily. So the one thing, and I can't speak for Eversource, right? And I should have said at the beginning, I'm not an engineer. I'm on the commercial side in the organization. So if we get too technical, you'll understand why I have an army of engineers who are much brighter than I am. The poles potentially could be utilized, right, just from practicality for them to bring a residential service to that lot as well, right? They would likely not put additional poles if they deemed, you know, down the line, if they had a request for service for a residence and they deemed that the poles are there, they may come underground, then rise a pole and then run an overhead service like you see on some of the others. So that may be the case. I can't say definitively, but
So
you know, it may be beneficial.
The electricity, once it leaves your site from the solar, is that compatible with residential use? Or is it higher wattage?
Higher.
It's higher voltage.
Yeah, it's higher voltage.
I'm not an engineer either.
Nor am I.
Okay, so I think if there's a consensus to continue this.
How much time do you need? We can
It's a good question. I see that your next meeting may be June 16. I'm curious what your next meeting after that might be.
June 30th.
June 30th.
June
Yeah,
30th.
I have to, let's
I think that's probably more reasonable, so we can
Yeah.
get some substance behind the answers.
Mr. Chair, you wanna?
Yep, please.
I move that we continue the public hearing on Route 88 solar until June 30th. You want a time, Tia?
6 p.m.
6 p.m. or 6:15?
or 6:15.
6:15, yeah. June 30th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is the Gnome Surf Inc. public hearing scheduled for 6:30. File number 26-3662, SPA-LID. The applicant proposes to construct a surf therapy camp for children and young adults, including an education center, a 2-story office and instructional building, outdoor program space, and 5 campsite-style cottages with a shared bathroom facility.
Mr. Chair, would you mind opening the public hearing first?
Before the presentation, does it matter whether it's before the presentation?
No.
All right. I move that we open the Gnome Surf public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good evening to the board. Attorney Mac Long on behalf of the applicant, Gnome Surf. Before we get started, I'm also joining with Christian Farland with Farland Corp., who's the engineer and consultant working in tandem with me on this project. We had a brief traffic study done and literally got it 2 hours ago. So we made copies for everybody, but we're not able to send it to Michael and Dia ahead of time. So if you're okay with it, we'll just pass it out. Brief, it's only 3 pages. Just kind of highlights some of the estimated car count ahead of the public comment and comments that we got from the board ahead of time. And we do have some extras if anybody in the audience would. So this is the first time that we're before the planning board with this one. We were before conservation last month to discuss the impacts on the conservation area. Dia, do you mind going down to the full site plan? If you're familiar with the property, to the north side here is Cumberland Farms. To the south is Benton Courts. And then further south is the old Westport Family Medicine, which is now Primacare. Primacare is the owner of the property and the seller here. Just to kind of get you acquainted with where we are, and access here from Main Road is proposed and shown as such. A little bit of an overview about Gnome Surf. If you're not familiar with their organization, they teach neurodivergent people how to surf and use surf therapy as a tool to work with these different persons of different ages, most notably children specifically. And the premise here is to create a space for children and families to go. It's kind of their home base, so that's the premise with the main building here would serve as executive offices, administrative, but also serve as a little bit of a surf shop. There'll be bathrooms in there for the students coming off of the beach to be able to shower and clean up. And then a part of this is also these outbuildings here that will be used as sort of like campsites. They're structures designed so that some of these students and their families can get out into nature and experience something that they otherwise would likely not have access to. You know, they are typically living in the inner cities and things like that, and so this provides an opportunity to really put them out into nature and get them an experience, a unique experience that they wouldn't get otherwise. They used to be located next to the Barn Restaurant down in Adamsville. That's where they've been and established, and we're actually here with two members of them. Chris has worked a long time in building this, and this is definitely a dream and a long-term project here for them, and it's a special one. I'm happy to be a part of it and excited to see, you know, what we can do here. It's been a long time looking. We've looked at multiple other properties, and finally we're able to negotiate a deal, and it's probably been 6 or 8 months before we've even gotten before the board. I know I came and saw Dia and Michael earlier, I talked with Ralph, and this has been a conversation for a long time. So eager to hear what the board has to say. A little bit more about the project. As I mentioned, access from Main Road into a parking lot, all gravel. Parking for the main building, handicap accessible, all ADA. We'll be able to go around the entire building and then have access to the back. Do you mind just pulling up the illustration of the building? Purely an illustration at this point, but just something to kind of show you the thought process. Really going for the barn dominium is the terminology that's been used. Much like the pole barns that we see throughout Westport, it's a pole structure. You know, there's no definitives here. We're not definitely going with this exact plan, but this is just something to kind of show the board an illustration of what the thought process is, and give an idea where the base layer or first floor is general public and, you know, accessible to all, and the second floor would serve primarily as an office space to be utilized by the team at Nome to conduct their operation. And then this kind of shows a little bit of the cottage idea with these outbuildings, just some of the theme, and it's a fun place for children to be able to experience nature and those sorts of things. Lastly, something I want to mention that's not shown on the plan, but we've talked about, I actually spoke with Dee about this earlier, there is a dome that is being proposed as well that we don't show on the plan currently, but will on a future iteration. So we're not looking for approval tonight. This is early stages. We really want to get feedback from abutters and feedback from the board, so that we can kind of sharpen the pencil and come back with something that checks all the boxes, and, you know, hopefully be able to look for approval then in a subsequent meeting from today.
Okay, thank you. So I am familiar with Nome. We've used their services to have grandchildren of friends of ours learn how to surf over at Horse Neck Beach. And I'm also familiar with one of the people that works for Nome. So I think it's a great concept. My only issue is where it's located. Traffic-wise, Cumberland Farms being an extremely attractive nuisance to little kids. And all the traffic going in and out of the gas stations and stuff like that. But beyond that, I think it's a great concept. I just wish it weren't right behind Cumberland Farms.
Understandable, and, you know, as I mentioned, we have kind of searched high and low. There's not a lot of vacant land in Westport that meets the zoning requirements necessary to do this. We are limited to business districts because of the fact that, you know, what they're intending on operating.
You're not educational?
It's arguable depending on how you classify it.
I would make the argument.
Fair. Again, still property-wise, there is limitations, you know, with, especially with what's been for sale in the last couple of years while we've been hunting for property. So, you know, we settled on this. And again, part of the other factor that goes into that is it is a cost analysis. You know, making this work financially is important. And right now, the numbers work per se.
Is there any flexibility on the entrance? Did you enter through Primacare?
So we've discussed that. We discussed that. That's been a major concern that I've heard from some butters that I've talked with. Conservation mentioned that people had those concerns. Conservation did discuss, obviously, that would want us to avoid a wetlands crossing if possible. Do you mind going back to the major full scale? So if we were to access from Primacare, it would probably have to be here because anything in this over here, we're beyond Primacare's building. I think Primacare is located somewhere here. And this would be too large of a wetlands impact. We'd be beyond the 5,000 square feet and it would be pretty major. So if we were to access, it would have to be through here. It would be difficult, and I think it would put an impact on Primacare and the flow of their traffic. You know, this is a pre-existing lot. The plan exists from 1999 and was endorsed as a Form A, and actually even notates that it had the requisite frontage at that time, and et cetera. Bless you. I do think that the concern of, you know, being an attractive nuisance with Cumberland Farms could be mitigated by some fencing, and obviously, you know, when there are people on site, no one works with these students day in and day out and are very familiar with, you know, the likelihood that they're going to want to try to go somewhere, but are going to do a good job at mitigating that concern. Furthermore, if you look at the car count, I think we're seeing 15 in the morning and 15 in the afternoon on an average at peak. And again, this is only a part of the year. Obviously, during the winter months, there's not.
This is traffic into your site.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
how about
Crisscross on Main Road? We don't have a traffic study on Main Road. I mean, I'm sure that abundance of them have been done. I mean, we could look into
The question around the traffic study, does that traffic study include the additional, or is that modeled off of the existing traffic out of your Adamsville Road location?
This study was based, and Christian, you can probably speak to this more than I can, but this was modeled off of this specific project and this plan.
And what is the expected uptick with regards to additional vehicles like van storage, things of that nature? Like you're running your operations, right? So you're going to have some additional it's more than just people coming and going and dropping off and picking up. It's also your gear and your stuff. How is that all equated into that traffic study?
They did factor employees and, you know, the like. There was a conversation between the engineers that did this traffic study and Nome so that they could better understand how their business operates. Do you guys intend on buying more vans? Is that?
No, I mean,
would you guys prefer that he come up, or is it okay?
Yeah, you can come on, sure.
Yeah, Chris, why don't you come up and just answer that question? Just introduce yourself.
my name's Chris Anteo. I'm the founder of Gnome Surf. Touch on a few things. We don't intend on buying many more vans. We have our trailer at Horseneck Beach that has a lot of our equipment. The only time that vans are truly leaving our facility currently is during the winter, maybe when they go to schools. We do in-school services for kids who have autism and Down syndrome, where we do land-based surf fitness and social emotional wellness. And that's the other reason why we have these, 4 or 5 cottages back there, is because our families start to isolate themselves, and that affects their mental health. And we're just trying to create a safe space where they can come together and actually be with like people, where they don't feel left out.
and can actually focus in on their mental health and social emotional well-being. So to be brief, no, we don't have that much traffic at all. We have 4 full-time employees. Maybe we'll add another one. We don't have that much traffic coming to our facility. But over in Adamsville, we're in a colonial house, and we're like in one room. We cannot get any work done. So this is why we need to build this facility. The cottages is like a phase 2 thing, like a dream to be able to provide this space for families to be able to congregate together and you know, build those relationships that they need, those support networks, and not be forgotten like they are everywhere else.
John?
I think what you do, Chris, is amazing work, and I'm so glad you do it, and I'm glad you're growing and finding more ways to provide the services you do, because they're important. I think I think you're creating you know, Cumberland Farms is not a controlled environment. People come in whenever they come in. You have a more controlled environment where people are coming in at a certain time, they're leaving at a certain time, and that's something you control. So, you know, whether it's having, you know, when everyone leaves at one time, someone out on Main Road to make sure everything's okay, that is something you have the ability to do. So the first point I'd make is I appreciate you coming before us early on in the process. I lost track of how many notations from NBL in terms of, but it's a long list of things having to do with how you present all of this, and I'm sure you're going to go through that list and do those things and check those boxes so that when you come before us, that list is going to be a 0 list. The point on traffic, though, that I would make is that the planning board is trying to reinforce the different character of different parts of Westport. So, and we did that with a zoning change over near your current location on the Westport side, because that's a little mini business district. And Central Village is clearly another area where what we want to do is reinforce the activity that is there. Because there are a lot of businesses, there's a lot of traffic, leads, you know, everyone, and they reinforce each other. And everyone finds a way, including me, several times a day of figuring out how do you get in and out of Lee's or over across the street to the bank. You know, but people do it. So I think adding the people who are going to use Nome into the Central Village is a good thing, not a bad thing. I think we want more density in the Central Village, not less density. And that means traffic. Well, in business districts, you have traffic. That's what you have. That's what makes them successful in business, is that there are a lot of people using it. And I think we want to reinforce that here. At least I do, you know, and over at the border with Adamsville, you know, these little business areas, you want to strengthen them. It's a shame to see what's closed over where you are now. You know, there was a lot of activity, and now vaporized. So I'm not as concerned by the impact, as I think there are things. Like, are people going to wander into Dunkin' Donuts to go buy a Diet Coke? I don't know, but I think that's something that if you find that's not a helpful thing for what you're trying to do, you're going to have a way of preventing that from happening. So I'm not too worried about that. Anyway, I'm supportive. There's a long list of stuff you gotta do. But I think this would benefit Central Village. And I'm glad you're locating there. You know, there are other places you might locate. I think this will be a real good addition to Central Village.
I would agree. I mean, as a lifelong Westport resident, I think that Central Village is a wonderful place. And, you know, something to point out is the distance from Main Road.
Right.
I mean, I think we're probably 300 feet, over 300 feet away from Main Road. And again, in this area, as John pointed out, you know, it is densely populated as it is. You don't really have cars, or you hope you don't have cars flying down, but I mean, we've got the playground, we've got Lee's Market, Cumberland Farms, Village Market, all, you know, in this stretch. And, you know I slow down in there. I would hope that most people do as well. The speed limit does reduce in there. But the congestion kind of also slows everybody down and does make it possible to be able to enter and exit. And again, we're not talking about 100 cars here. You know,
Right.
it's not a Lee's Market. This is a minor.
Or Cumberland Farms.
Exactly.
You're controlling the times.
Exactly.
I think that the traffic is probably a minor issue here. I've looked, Howard Stein Hudson knows what they're doing. It's, you know, and I think that operation is small. I think it's more the physical aspects of having, you know, the Betancourt's driveway is right along that side of his property. Those two driveways come together, and then you've got just the big open space of, it's just all paved in front of, in front of the, in front of the gas station and everything. It's just one big pavement area. And those are things that we'll probably be dealing with in the new central plan. You're applying for a special permit and low impact development, so you've got to think about that. You should, just as a caution, I think you should think carefully about the well and the water supply. And particularly when you, I think just servicing the condominium, and so you have a place where you can operate the, sort of the program, the program space. I think the well is a minor issue, but when you start to have the cottages, the wells may...
Each cottage will not have a water supply. So the cottages are basically a bedroom, and there will be one outbuilding here that serves as a bathroom for all of the units. So there would really only be water and sewer here, and the sewer line comes through and would connect into the sewer system here. It's shown on the north side of the property there. So well-wise, and again, you know, the load here isn't a massive one. We're talking about a couple cottages, and I do think, you know, there are some showers and whatnot, but that would really only be in peak season that we have them being used. But definitely understanding the concern.
Yeah, just you know, the Board of Health and DEP may look at this differently, so just be cautious about that. You know, it isn't, you know, I know we're used to having wells stuck right next to our houses. DEP may, you know, I don't think this actually needs to get to DEP, but the Board of Health may have another caution about that. So just that 100-foot radius around this well, I think you could easily be in that, you know,
just be careful about where that gets located.
I guess the question for the Board of Health is this a public water supply? Or is it just a well? And you really need to have some conversation
Yeah, I
about
think
that.
you should be able to, if there's not plumbing in each of these, you should be able to dodge the public water supply.
Agreed.
We think.
Because if you're in the public water.
There's also no, I mean, I don't even think we show like a basic kitchen to like wash dishes, but there's no like formal, they're not even serving food to tens of people.
I love the design of them, but you might want to think of a different word than cottage, because cottage implies that you're living there, you need a bathroom, you need a sink, you need a lot of stuff.
I almost use the
These are
word
really
but
rooms for reflection or,
the only reason I used cottage is because, like, I was gonna use the term yurt, I don't know if you're
Yeah.
familiar with that, where it's like the tent, but they have structure. They're
yeah,
not a tent, you know what I mean? It has a roof, it has a door, it has windows.
So they look like tiny houses,
Yes,
but they're not because there's no kitchen facility
Yeah.
or
Or
bathroom
bathroom.
facility. And so I don't know how the Board of Health would, or DEP would look at that. Would they consider that 5 bedrooms? Or is it 5?
I think that's what we're gonna
Something
push
else.
for, is the fact, because Christian, you designed the septic system based on,
For the record, Christian Fallon, Principal Engineer and President of the Fallon Corp. As far as the Board of Health goes, we are in DEP, we are to be in full compliance with the design of the septic system and well. We did look into the town also has more stringent bylaws than Title V, so we have looked into that. As far as the cottages, we'll come up with another name for our next meeting.
Cabins.
But they will be, we did propose 110 gallons per day, which is basically 1 bedroom. We haven't filed with the Board of Health yet, but we believe that makes the most sense for the use. But we will, again, we're early stages here. No surf, this is a big benefit for the community, that's why we're here. We want to hear from the community. And before we address all the peer review comments in the town staff report, we just wanted to, get it.
Well, I think you need to speak with the building inspector too, because I don't know what he would consider those sheds. I mean, a disconnected bedroom, or
disconnected office space.
disconnected,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know
Well,
what.
it's
We'll definitely look into it.
yeah, I believe because of the square footage of them, they fall into like a unique situation because of how small they are. But we will check with Ralph and confirm. Again, not something that we will address prior to the next meeting.
There was a time, there was probably a lot of little cottages like this all along the river.
That's right. No, I think they're cool.
Without notice. But, it's, you could even make them tiny houses. I mean, that's so that, a family could stay in there without having to go outside.
Is the intention that people would spend the night in these?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like a one night type of situation, not
Yeah.
a long
Yeah.
extended
Yeah.
period. But, on a weekend, a
Yeah.
family could come in and spend the evening. And as Chris pointed out, you intend to have them all filled, and so that people of the same background
Right.
get an opportunity to do something collaboratively, shared outdoor space, maybe a fire pit, those types of
And a
things.
shared bathroom,
Yes.
shared shower
Yes.
in the
There's
building to the north.
there are multiple showers. I mean, obviously, I think the intent
Yeah.
here is a short stay, so
Yeah.
you're not gonna have
Right.
people like excessively showering or anything like that. But yes, there would be a shower.
Gotta get the salt water off.
Yes,
Right.
and the sand most
Sand,
especially.
sand. What do you consider the use?
It's it's a mixed use. I mean, because we have office space, we have education occurring here. I mean, it's really flexible, and so that's why we've stayed within.
So, I mean, you're familiar with our bylaw, so, I mean, how are you fitting this peg into a round hole? Is really what I want to know.
Business business district has a lot of flexibility with what you can do, especially in this area. Given the unique nature of it, you know, that's why we settled on this. We did look at another property further down, but it was primarily residential, and that, you know, gets complicated when you start having office space. And also this location gives them the ability as they grow to bring on a couple more people. And, you know, a large part of what they do is administration, you know, getting in. They do a lot of work with the local schools, New Bedford Public Schools, Fall River Public Schools, so there's a lot of administration that goes into that. So
But you're talking about educational use, and
yes,
educational use can be anywhere. Doesn't have to be.
for that portion of the business. You know, I do think it lends itself to that, but I understand where you're going with that.
Because I think then there should be, I would interpret it that way, but I don't know anybody else, but it would be the building inspector. But we had one before us up on Old Harbor Road.
Yeah. Being, you know, we're just saying exact under the.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I mean, I'm familiar with the Dover Amendment. I don't know if that's where you're going with this. Educational uses would fit underneath that, where, you know, we're proposing a school or something like that. So that's something we can look into. And that would allow us to be anywhere.
Right.
Allows us to skip some of the zoning requirements for that.
Well, I think it's also fundamentally true. I mean, you take young people at one level, and then you bring them to another level. And that's education. I mean, that's really what you're doing.
Yeah. It is. It's not something we wanted to, you know, push, but
It's definitely a part of it.
An argument we could make if we had to.
We had another one before us on Old Harbor Road a couple of years ago that was for older teens, but it was, I think it could have gone, but it blew up. I mean, it could have gone under the education use.
The big difference there is they were in a residential agricultural district, and this is in the business district.
Right, yeah. They don't really need that, right?
I think, I'm not troubled at all by the mixed use. That's exactly what we want.
That was my fault with it. Locationally speaking, I think it's prime zoning for what we're looking to do. You know, I do agree that if we were in another location, we could look to make the argument, but I don't think we need to at this point.
I don't think you need to here either.
They're tailor-made for this district.
So this is the public hearing. Does anybody else like to say anything, ask anything?
My name's Andrew Betancourt. I own the property, the Betancourt family property here. And for years, I'm not trying to dissolve this, I'm not trying to stop them from doing this, but there is an issue with entering the place. For years, Dr. Callan, there's not enough right away at this point. And they've always wanted to access our property to continue to get through. So I just, again, I'm not trying to stop this, but how do we resolve this issue? I have all my bins here for the blocks.
Right.
I stopped moving those over, you know, it's changed my life now, so.
Yeah, of course. Do you know what the dimension is from the pink?
I thought it was 40 feet, you had to have, but it could be different with different zoning, but.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, yeah, we proposed a 16-foot wide driveway because it's very low use, 15 trips per day, very minimal. It'd be very rare for a car to be coming out and a car to be going in and a car to be going out. There is enough room to do so, but also, you know, it's a tight squeeze in here, but there's certainly more than enough. There's over 40 feet here. Typical right-of-way, if this was a residential development, a right-of-way of 40 feet, you would have a roadway of 24 feet. Still enough room for sidewalks if you wanted. So there's definitely more than enough room here to do what we have to do. We also, I haven't mentioned, but we've kept the grading
try to minimize it as much as possible with the existing grades. So especially in this area, it's very kept at what the existing grade is, so it'll be very negligible difference in elevations in this area. And what that allows us to do is minimize the grading within this area here. There was a little high spot, which is on Mr. Betancourt's property. So that area will be cut down a little bit, so his property is actually going to be higher than ours, which also is a good benefit because we're not shedding any stormwater onto his property, and it's going more towards, we created a swale in this area here to prevent any going to the Cumberland site, and we designed a bio retention area in the front area here to capture that stormwater. But to answer the question, I feel there definitely is nothing to squeeze this.
Yeah. So, but you can confirm that that's 40 feet from the.
I can get you the exact dimension, and I can show that on the plan.
Yeah, please. I think that would be helpful.
Yep.
If I recall, Mr. Betancourt, I think that when Callan was building the Family Medical Center, he was using that access, wasn't he?
He was, when he was going around through the back, through this way to access it. But that was just with the equipment and whatnot. But for years, he's had these surveyed twice already, and it's never been wide enough, so I don't know why.
Wide enough
all of a sudden it's wide enough now.
Well, wide
and again,
enough
I don't want to stop them or anything. I just don't want to say, yeah, okay, and then all of a sudden, well, we need more room. You know?
Well, it's for a subdivision road that you need 40 or 50 feet.
Yeah.
So, and this isn't a road, this is just a driveway. So it's not the dimensions of a road, it's just a driveway access.
Okay, so the use difference, uses
different.
If I may, I think in the past, there have been multiple developers that have attempted to put subdivisions back here with multiple houses, which would have lended itself to a wider layout, but because it's a driveway, significantly narrower.
I mean, I'm just watching out for myself too. I don't want to have to stop moving things, and you know, the blocks on that side, they're not, you know, presentable. They're functional. So I don't know, you know, you're gonna be like, well, you're gonna put a fence there or something, and that's my responsibility, something like that. And then the other factor is too, they occasionally get moved. Do I have access to the other side? I actually been clearing out behind them because they get road there.
I don't think that they would have any issue with you going back there with a machine if something were to fall over. I mean,
once you get to that point, obviously you can work things out how the road continues on. I'll probably clean it up if anything, but I just, you know,
absolutely.
These things.
It tends always to be a good neighbor.
I'm saying.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi everyone, long time no see. Nicole Plant, the owner of Scrapper and Hard Work. I own UQ Realty in the back part of Scrapper and Hard Work. I love gnome surfing and what they do, and I would like to make that clear for the record. I have talked to Attorney Long and I have talked to Chris. We have had a couple of phone conversations. I am concerned about the location and children running around. As people know, I have tenants that have big trucks. I have the area of where I am located and the money that I've had to put forth to improve my driveway due to the trucks and transportation. I know they just produced Truck City and thank you guys for doing that, but in the past couple of months, and the people know in the summer and July 4th weekend, I can't get in and out of my parking lot. I have talked to the Michael and Dea a couple of times about the transient area of Cumberland Farms. I've had to put up fencing. I have spent over $50,000 to improve the front of our building to help keep the transient area from flowing over into our parking and to keep our parking that. I have a question for them of where does the parking overflow when they do have volunteers and they do have extra people in this. And I feel bad for them because they have not experienced the 4th of July weekend when now there's no parking in the village and there's people using parking and there's no way to get in and out of their parking. Signage for them is going to be difficult and where all that place is, and I'm worried about them coming in and out. And I was very honest with them. I want them there. I have no problem with that, but the location for us is awful to come in and out. It takes me 10 minutes to get in and out of my own parking lot. Had an 18-wheeler this week, it totally blocked our whole driveway. None of us could get in and out for appointments because of these and everything across the street. They're gonna add to that, but yes, but that whole area is so congested right now, we're gonna add to that also and adding another driveway. And it's nothing that has ever been done about that whole area with the traffic, a real traffic study by the town to kind of see how we've all done. I've removed rocks, which this town has not done. We have spent $5,000 removing a rock that was in the middle. If you've been here long enough, there was a rock that we moved to get things out, to get traffic off the roads. They fly by, come in our parking lot and go by cars all day long. You hear horns and everything else. They are gonna have children in the backyard where we have till 11 o'clock, Cumberland Farms is open, and then we're having a restaurant open until 11 o'clock at night. It is not gonna be quiet, and I am sorry. I have been there till 11 o'clock at night. It is not quiet there. People leave certain restaurants, certain establishments, I'm not gonna say, and they're loud. It's the only two places in town that are gonna be open till 11 o'clock at night. Someone just got a liquor permit that is on the other side of you, which is 100 feet away. It is gonna be loud. I'm sorry, they're not gonna sleep. I'm worried about children. I have my own. It is not going to be a quiet location. It is not going to be rustic. My whole property is cleared to the back. I am going to do something. I have brought different ideas to this board. I have run ideas by them. I have a well in the back. I have a 6-bedroom perk for the back. It's not going to be quiet against this line right here. I would hope there was fencing. I would hope there would be something. I want to protect the children. I would really want that to happen. Christian, my property actually grades towards my property. You kind of have it here, but it pitches down towards my property. I'm worried about the runoff from that condominium running into my property and flooding it, because if you go in my backyard after a heavy rainstorm, there's certain parts that would flood, and if they don't have drainage off that condominium, I will have a lot of runoff. Electric going to the back. I have been working with Eversource for a year. Coming back here, this property has new electric. Companies worked with us I own that property for 5 years. We moved the poles. We could make the parking lot better for companies and for us. They worked with us. We moved it, but now we're working to the electric to the back. They have 4 engineers working on that. I'd like to see the electrical plan and how you guys want to get electrical to the back of that, because I don't think you have any room on this side to do that, and where all that would be congested, because I have to go underground after that pole. Again, there's so many pieces to this little congested area. There's so many questions that I have that I know they're at 10,000 feet, and they got to get to 5,000 feet to even come down, but I would hope that there'd be an open dialogue and then more dialogue, because again, there's concerns about the location I feel for them. Thank you.
Okay.
So I guess when I went through everything, I went through all the notes a couple of times, my big thing is around fire safety services and stuff, and there was the 16-foot wide driveway where minimum apparatus size by fire department is 20, and we're asking for, some leniency there. I kind of struggling around that. Also around the fire department also says they need complete access around the building, as well as access to all those cottages, whatever we're going to call them in the back, right, from a life safety perspective. So I would really like to understand how you're going to resolve those comments, just because, even though it's going to be seasonal use in those, we still need to be considerate. Someone's going to get trapped. You trap everyone in there with a 16-foot driveway and a fire truck, pump truck, and all of those things if you have an incident. So I just want to make sure that everyone is safe more than anything. I really appreciate what you guys do. I think it's a great charity, a great thing, and I'm supportive of it. I just really want to make sure that we're safe for the people that are going to use this, not just people staying there, but also your employees and your volunteers. So I think that's one of the big things that I'm struggling right now with the design, the way it was, and the layout of the road and everything. And given that I go into Cumbies, half the time you're in our Cumbies and you're almost going to get hit trying to pull out. I can't, so just the amount of curb cuts of the road there, it's a little scary for me from a safety perspective.
While I understand where you're coming from with that, with it being busy. But again, it's Central Village. I don't think we're adding a lot to it. We do intend to talk with Darren specifically and the fire department and get their input on the plan as it is. I think for a fire apparatus to be able to make a wide swing off of Main Road and come straight back is a much more feasible access than having to come into Primacare and make a tight corner around to then come up and in. We're not going to really be able to make the roadway or access any wider from if we were to even be able to access via easement. Another thing that we talked about doing was an underground storage tank to add water so that there would eliminate the need for a pump truck on site just to service these areas. We did talk about grading along here so that if God forbid something did need to get back there, it could. But this is all ADA accessible. It's all one level, you know, you could walk out there with a wheelchair. Some of these students and children are in wheelchairs or are, you know, electric chairs of sorts. So there'd be no reason why a stretcher couldn't get back there or they wouldn't be able to access it. I completely agree. I mean, obviously the top concern here is the safety of everybody, most notably the students. You know, they're special needs. They don't move in the same manner that we all do, and so that's a concern, but definitely something that we intend to go over with the fire department specifically. Again, this was primarily to get feedback and go from there. But we do intend to meet with the fire department and discuss that.
You should also reach out, I think, to the Commission on Disabilities to get their input around any of the ADA or pieces there. I think that would be a good you know, gesture to the community, just because they feel like getting them involved would be a good idea as well.
John?
I'm glad everyone who's spoken is supportive of what you're doing and wants to see this happen, and we're talking about how it happens, not whether it happens. That's the sense I get from the comments. And safety is always a concern, sometimes gets used as a trump card, and yes, the fire department likes 20 feet, but fire apparatus is 8 feet wide. And that's what you're trying to do, is get a fire truck up there and it's 8 feet wide. The other last point I'd make, and I think we should continue this so that you can start to address the laundry list of all the things, the specific comments. And we need to know how long it's going to take you to do that. But this is a 7+ acre buildable lot, as I understand it. And it's not owned by the Land Conservation Trust, so it's a buildable lot. And that means the kind of issues we're talking about are going to be there no matter what the use is, right? It's a lot that an owner of this lot has a right to use. And so access, all of that kind of stuff have to be solved by anyone. But to say, well, we're not going to use it, I don't think that's a proper response.
Agreed, and I, you know, just to kind of echo on some of the comments, most notably first year with Betancourts, I think Christian and I made a point, and we will be discussing this with them, but I don't see an issue with doing something like a 10-foot wide easement for you to be able to get in there and make, you know, if a block were to fall over or, you know, something were to shift, obviously you're driving in there with a loader, things move, you need to be able to fix that. I don't foresee that being a problem. There'd be clean and clear access in there, really easy for you to be able to get in and out. I don't think that would be too much of an issue. To Nicole's point about if there was a time when there were a plethora of cars, this is a dirt driveway to kind of preserve the natural characteristics. You would be able to park on the shoulder, being that even at the most narrow, we're at 40 feet. With 16 feet, you could still have an additional 8 feet on either side, plus, you know, we're still talking 16 feet off of 40, 24 feet. So there would be a little bit of an additional room there. Concerned about the runoff, that's this entire, kind of in the way here, but this entire area is a retention basin. to capture the water.
Not on the other side.
No, I understand, but whenever a project like this is designed, we have to reduce the amount of water that we are putting onto the property. So the purpose and size of this basin is to capture all of the runoff from the cabins, cottages, yurts, whatever we're gonna call them, the barndominium, from the parking area, everything is captured and not dispersed onto either side of it. I do like the idea of putting a fence. I was under the impression that there may have been a stone wall.
I put that stone wall when I cleared the property.
So there is a stone wall there now.
It's just rocks from now.
Yeah.
We're gonna finish that when we finish, the other side gets finished, we're doing that in phases.
Yeah, so I mean, definitely some sort of a border there to protect most notably the children from wandering off, like we talked about. But again, to echo what John said, it seems like more of a how, less of an if, and we are, a collaborative company and want to collaborate not only with the town, but with the abutters and make this a space that everybody is excited about and happy to see, be a part here in our community. I personally thought that this was a wonderful thing to come to Westport. I mean, there are other towns with beaches, locally that they could have elected to look at, but they chose here because of Horseneck Beach and the nature and characteristics of Westport. And, I think that this is something that we could be proud of to have here in our town.
Okay, I'm going to say that I agree with John. It's not a question of no, it's a question of how. And so that's, if we can get through those. Is there any more comments from the audience? Questions?
I think it's minimal. I live in the condos, the Westport Cottage condos. I live right along the utility road. I'm not really speaking for them, but they know I'm here. We just have noise factor. How does it affect our leaching fields and our wells? How close is it? I know we got the restaurant going up too. That's farther up.
Mr. Chairman, could you state your name
to us?
So if you could come up and
Oh, I'm
identify
so
yourself, please.
Sorry. It's just
So that
resident questions.
Right, but we have a TV audience and they have to hear what you say through the microphone.
My name is Cheryl Lyle, and I live in Unit 18 at the Westport Cottages,
Okay.
where we have the senior building in the back. And a lot of us are concerned because, we've had a lot of issues with our wells and our leaching fields and just trying to keep them up to date because they were pretty standard, not standard, they were pretty high access, not access. They were made very well about 20 years ago. So now we're having problems and, we've been spending money. We have to watch things like that. And we have a big natural wildlife roadway. We get the 30 or 40 turkeys coming through. They'll be back in your yard too. And then we got the deer, we got the coyote back there. Maybe the more people move in, they'll move out. Which I still like seeing them though, but noise factor, the restaurant's gonna be closer to us, I guess, than your facility. And I understand they're having outside music. I already hear music. Even when I shut my my sunroom, I can still hear music in my house. So I'm along the wood line, and we were just concerned about that because I knew you were gonna have little fire pits, and of course, I don't know you're gonna have electric music, you're just gonna have just simple natural music, right? Just people singing and gathering around. And the restaurant's gonna have the electric music. So we're just all concerned about just little things like that.
Yeah.
I
I don't think, from my perspective, I don't think it should affect your wells or your septic. I don't think it would affect the noise level. I think other things would be more noisy, like the restaurant.
Right, they have well, there's what is the timeline? Was it 10 o'clock? A lot of people, if they have outside music, I'm probably hearing the pizza place. That's what I'm hearing, 10 Cousins.
10 Cousins?
No.
They have outside
Village Pizza.
The Village Pizza down there?
No, 10 Cousins. I'm sorry, where am I pointing? That way.
10 Cousins, you can hear.
They have
that
outside
from
music.
Social club.
Social club, yeah.
Oh, where we are.
Where would we be?
That's a central business district.
But that's not it's 10, and I was told, yeah, it's 10 o'clock. They shut it off. Nah, not all of them. Some people have their private parties, but, you know, sometimes you gotta live with it.
Okay.
So that's petty, I know.
It's a concern, I would be concerned too.
Access, we have good access. You know, we have Perfect Smiles up there, but we have great access. So,
Thank you.
Could I get Miss Cheryl's last name, please?
oh, I'm sorry, Belle Isle, it's Belisle.
Oh, thank you.
So that's it. Thank you.
In terms of a continuance, we'd probably be looking for the 6-week mark.
6-week mark? So-
Just to allow us time to address what we have, you know,
So
send in
that's-
the plans, get some more peer review back.
Mid-July?
July 14th or
Seven.
the end of July?
July 14th. What's the end of July meeting?
28.
28th? You ready to do that? All right, yeah, well, if we could continue to the 28th.
You want a motion? Before I make the motion, Chris, I think when you cut the ribbon on this, it's going to be an incredibly festive, positive day for the town of Westport.
I agree.
And everyone's going to want to be in there, seeing it and participating in it, and seeing what you're doing and how you're doing it, and wanting to rent your cottages because they're going to be so awesome. But at any rate, I move to continue the public hearing to July 28th at 6:15 or so.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you to the board and thank you for the comments.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Okay, back to planners reports, or are we done?
Have a good night.
Yeah, you too.
We've completed the planners report, the assistant planners report. There's an ongoing projects update. So Dia, if you could just cover the highlights, so major subdivisions and solar developments.
Sure.
Okay, conversations outside.
Thank you.
So I have a little project update for projects that have been worked on this calendar year, 2026. We don't have to go through the whole thing, but you can see, you know, we've done a couple special permits, unspecified categories, pre-apps, and 14 A&Rs. When it comes to site plans, we just received the as-built for 515 American Legion Highway. That's an old development from 2018, so we'll sign off on that. We've got some old developments like Watuppa Realty and 5 Star that we're still trying to track down their as-built. Plaza 549 is pending its final review. American Legion Highway, we have final plans in the department to be endorsed, and then we'll move forward to the as-built. 854 State Road, construction has not started yet. That's a minor site plan from a couple months ago. And then we just reviewed Gnome Surf Inc. 222 State Road is upcoming at the next meeting. Then when it comes to subdivisions, Lawton Trust, Bob actually called me just a couple weeks ago. He said the as-bilt's almost complete for that, so hopefully we can get that out of the way. Bentley Estates, Derek's going to be going out this week. Construction inspections are going to begin on Wayland Way. Inheritance Lane, they just have a couple final items they've got to address before we can sign off on the as-built and release the surety. Corey Ridge, you saw an update today. Construction is ongoing, and we're still working on some of the last-minute tweaks to the HOA documentation before we bring it before the board. Same with Francis Estates. They've also got some HOA documentation ongoing with inspections beginning this week with MBL. Rosewood Lane, they've just got an as-built to be updated with the gas line. Marcotte, inspections are ongoing. Last contact last week. And then Herring Run Farm is an old development that we are trying to reestablish and finish to see through construction. Half of that subdivision has been built. And then with our solar, we pretty much just have Route 88 on the docket. Ironwood Renewables is still working on their back-end permitting. And then 359 Division Road Solar will actually try to close out this month.
is minutes from May 19th.
Jared, you read these and commented on them. They've been corrected, right?
Yes, they have.
You're now there.
Oh. I'm official now, I made the minutes.
You made the minutes, so you were there. I will move that we approve the minutes of May 19th, 2026.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Move to adjourn.
Other business?
We scared everyone away.
We did have an amended agenda today, so there's other business.
Oh.
Jim wanted to discuss the high school reuse.
That's right. And were you at the selectmen's meeting?
Not all of it, but some of it, yeah.
Not.
I didn't
not
hear
late,
the
right.
discussion on that.
Yeah, you left before the discussion
Fun.
picked up. It was quite a watch.
Yeah, I watched some of it, and I think that we ought to have in our future meeting a discussion on how we can help. And I think that we could, a couple of things. One, I think, I don't know if they care what we think, but I think we ought to keep the high school and not try to sell it or knock it down. And even though the uses for it may develop over time instead of a big plan right in the beginning. And I think if we're going to consider, and I think they were talking about this, is housing for some of it. I think the way to do the housing is to back into what kind of water and septic we could get and use the other uses that you want to use the building for, and then subtract that and get to a point where you can say, okay, we want a RFP for 39 housing units in there, can they be fit in? And send it out and try to get some real feedback from people who really do this kind of work instead of just consultants. And so I think we ought to offer the planning office's ability to write this kind of stuff up.
I agree. You need a motion for that or anything, or just sense that that's what we're gonna do?
What's the feeling?
I think we can help, and I think we've all commented from time to time, you need someone who's actually building affordable housing. If you lay out, I think you're exactly right. What assumptions went into, well, we can't do housing because we don't have any water, we don't have any sewer. Okay, well, that door's closed because we made this assumption. We'll assume something else. Instead of spending, we've spent several $100,000 studying it. How about if we went out and did some perk tests and did a well and said, you could actually get, if you throw in all the property, which is the town property, you could actually get this for a water supply. And then, okay, then what doors does that open up? And I think, those are the kind of steps that you take. If you said to, then I think we need to think about the zoning and the zoning uses and all of those kinds of stuff, because we're in residential. Once it doesn't become a school, then it's 60,000 square foot lots. And
And that's not what we want. Preserving the value for the town is in having some mixed use. We have a zoning article that supports a proposal, you know, those are the kind of mechanisms. And just as, if we were doing a feasibility study for a buyer, not a feasibility study for the town, but a feasibility study for the buyer, how much water and wastewater can I get? You know, what are the basic questions? Does what I want to do, is it allowed under the zoning? And if we think the value is for the town is residential, in converting the school, is that not allowed? Could we change the zoning? Those are the kind of steps that we need to get through, as opposed to knowing, you know, everything is a constraint. Well, how do we overcome those constraints?
Well, I think, so with the zoning, if you're talking about residential uses in addition to other uses for the town, I think the residential is going to be more ruled by the new regulations at the state level than our own zoning.
We could rezone it in a
We
smart
could
in a
rezone
smart growth overlay,
Mm.
and I think that would get around any concerns of spot zoning with the changing the underlying zoning. We could just put a smart growth overlay on top. I think that would probably, I mean, like to Bob's point, we would need to see what kind of density that the land could bear out.
Right.
But we would then design it around those parameters.
No matter what, it's not 200 units, it's 30.
30 or 40.
30 or 40, that's
Right.
that's what we're talking about.
You're not talking high density, you're talking appropriately sized for the space, and that the infrastructure can hold. When I say infrastructure, water,
As a reuse of the building.
Yes,
I'm not
exactly.
talking about knocking it down and putting it
Right.
on.
No.
So, but then you can also put in the RFP that we want a space for a nonprofit that's gonna come in and do YMCA kind of stuff. And we wanna preserve the auditorium because it's much better than the new one. And it's got all the electronics, it's got the acoustics, it's got the stage, it's got more seating. Why would you want to get rid of it?
I think, Mr. Chair, I'm totally in agreement with the procedure that Bob laid out about seeing what water and septic can support in terms of housing. And I think, and I've said this before, but I'm sorry to repeat myself, housing is the primary first thing to consider, because housing is the only use that actually brings in money. And all the other uses take money. They're nonprofits, they're town offices, they're whatever, that cost money. Housing is the one that generates an income stream. And unless we want the taxpayers of Westport to pay the entire cost of this, which is not going to happen, we're going to have to figure out what creates a revenue stream, how big is the revenue stream, is there a developer because of the revenue stream who would do a mixed-use development that would be, the foundation would be the housing, but they would then be able to do other uses, you know, public use of auditorium, town offices, whatever. And you combine that, if you sell this building in Town Hall, because everything's moving up there, then there's more revenue that brings that cost down from $40 or $60 million, which is never going to go through town meetings. So we've got to, that's why I think housing is so important to consider. It's the one thing where you may get a developer saying, I can do something.
And the reason I think that we need to get input from real developers, we have some of these developers who live here in
Right.
Westport, and we've talked to them, and they say send us an RFP.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, but I think we need to include it, what else we want out of this. You know, we just don't wanna give away the building. We want to have it, have the whole package be an asset to Westport, so that you can get, you know, for instance, the rec department wants to have access to the gymnasium and stuff like that. But our rec department is run by one person, and they can't run something like that. You need to get a nonprofit, and we have, really, I mean, we have, I don't know how many billionaires we have in Westport now, but it increases by the year. I think there should be a way to convince some of them to donate something into this kind of structure for the good of the town.
Mr. Chair, I don't think this takes a joint meeting of the planning board and select board. I do think you and Bob could meet, you could get on the agenda of the select board and say just what you said, which is, you know, we can be helpful to this process to get us away from chasing our tail and going around in circles to actually getting some direction, some movement in a direction.
So here's what I would recommend is to draft for you all to authorize the chairman via planning board staff to draft a memo to the select board to get on their next agenda. I don't know when they're going to talk about this the next time. But to outline a couple of ideas and approaches, just very conceptual level, don't have to get into a lot of detail, but to start the conversation with them, because I think it will really take you all sitting, you and Bob sitting down with them and having this conversation to get things moving.
Do we need a motion to do that, or just do it?
It would be nice to have a motion, just because unless you all want to review the memo before we send it out, which we could do in 2 weeks. So would you prefer
I'm
to?
confident that you can draft a memo based on the conversation we had tonight. And I would move that we authorize the chair and vice chair to meet with the select board and present them a memorandum of how the planning board and the planning department staff can assist the select board in getting to a feasible solution, multi-use solution for the high school.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Now you want a motion to adjourn?
Obviously.
Move to adjourn.
Do we have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.